Pehme, Editor-in-Chief of City and State, and this is Last Look. Today, our guest is Doug Muzzio. He's a professor at the Baruch School of Public Affairs and the host of City Talk on CUNY TV. Doug, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So tomorrow, we by City and State are co-hosting a conference together with Baruch and Effective NY. Tell us about the conference.
Well, the conference is an attempt to introduce New Yorkers and even savvy New Yorkers to the constitutional issues that are on the ballot. There were 6 of them. The legislature approved 8 of them this session, which is a very large number. And we want to point out to folks that the state constitution is the foundational document. It's important. It affects your daily life. And the third thing is we're laying the groundwork for the reality of a 2017 constitutional question. Do we hold a convention?
And by law, every 20 years, we have to vote on whether we want to have a convention.
Right.
And so that comes up next in 2017,
yep,
right?
That's exactly right.
What happened in 1997 when we voted about constitutional convention?
We didn't want it. And then in the last real convention that actually produced recommendations for the voters was 1967, but the voters in their wisdom rejected the proposals.
Now, in general, with referenda on the ballot, how do voters tend to vote?
Oh, man, they tend to be ill-informed generally. I mean, if you did a public opinion survey and asked who's running for governor, you've got, a certain level of knowledge. If you ask people about ballot questions, forget it, they don't know it. So essentially, you're talking to the attentive public, and that's a real small one. So who votes on these issues? We don't know, really, because they go to the polls. It's very difficult. There's no exit polls on ballot propositions, so we don't know their demographics, their socioeconomics. Who knows? But they're high attention voters.
And we're in the weeds on this as much as anybody. But sometimes when when I read the referenda on the ballot, and they're pretty confounding, the language. How does the language come about for the ballot referendum?
Well, I mean, the language is part of the instrument, and it reflects the power of the writers and the interest of the writers. So, for example, in the casino amendment, you've got all these projections of all these benefits to come out of it. There's a lawsuit saying, well, wait a minute, you've loaded the language in such a way to almost guarantee that it will be looked at favorably. So he who writes the proposal, in a sense, determines the outcome.
But is it the legislature that writes the language for the referenda?
Yes, it would be. It would come out of the legislature. So the legislature are a group of self-interested actors who want to write it in the way that's going to maximize their own power and self-interest.
So obviously we've heard a great deal about the gambling referendum. What are some of the other contentious issues?
Well, you've got raising the ages that judges have to retire. Currently at 70, there are exemptions. The proposed change would move it to 80. Again, one could argue that it advantages established interests, that the legislature doesn't do anything that mitigates its power or mitigates the power of its constituencies. So again, what you're doing is you're keeping people frozen in place. Now, there's an argument that these people have expertise, and why are you losing this expertise? But another argument is power protects itself.
What are the pros and cons of having a constitutional convention?
Well, the pros are that the system is sclerotic, and the only way to really reform the system is a thoroughgoing review, a real constitutional review, like New York City did in 1989 Charter Revision Commission. That hasn't happened. You need it. It needs to be thoroughly explored. But if you look at the 8 measures that were passed by the legislature, they're almost all outside what one would consider normal constitutional practice. The only one is the redistricting, and that's another joke insofar as 2 consecutive legislatures have to pass it. It then goes to the voters, and the way that the original enabling legislation was set up, the legislature still has final say over it. So yeah, you're going to go through this circus, if you will, and the outcome is the legislature's still going to control the process.
Yeah, when we think about the federal Constitution, we think about the Bill of Rights, we
Right.
think about these core values
Right.
that this is codifying.
Right.
But, in this case, we're talking about land swaps, right?
Right. I mean, it really, the New York State Constitution, like the New York City Charter, has all this extraneous stuff that belongs either in the administrative code or state statute. It doesn't belong in a fundamental document like a constitution. You got all this stuff that should be brushed away.
So who are some of the people that are going to appear at our event tomorrow?
Wow, the event really is. The event includes people that I teach in class. I mean, you've got Bob Ward, you've got Galley, you've got all these names, Jerry Benjamin, who really know the state, know its government, know the Constitution. I think this is probably the foremost group of state political and government experts that's been assembled in one conference that I'm aware of.
Well, that's very exciting.
It is.
So, and our readers can go to effectiveny.org to sign up for the conference or contact the Baruch School of Public Affairs or City and State. Doug Muzzio, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it.
And that's it for this episode of Last Look. For more episodes, please join us on the web at cityandstateny.com.